Okay, hi everyone. My name is Daria. I'm the current Programming and Communications Officer at IPPWC, and I'm super excited to bring this event to you today. So, as a quick reminder, all of our speaker series happen on the second Wednesday of every month. So, this is our November speaker series, and we have two incredible guests with us here today. Before we get started, we just want to remind everyone to please mute yourself during the event. We will have a time for Q&A to ask questions later, but for now, definitely mute yourselves and definitely feel free to keep your cameras on while the discussion is happening. And right now, I'm going to pass it on to Nancy.
Greetings, everyone. I can see that we're almost a group. We are a group from coast to coast and maybe one day from our third coast. Our practice in our organization is to rotate land acknowledgements, and today it happens to be the East, and I acknowledge that I'm in Mi'kmaq me. This is unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people covered by the Peace and Friendship Treaty signed 300 years ago with the British Crown. At that time, the English were attempting to establish themselves and wanted to eliminate the French connection with the Mi'kmaq. Mi'kmaq encompasses modern day Nova Scotia and parts of New Brunswick. Specifically, I am at a place called Indian Point, which translates from Mi'kmaq language to meeting place. Evidence of ancestral presence was made abundantly clear to us on finding an artifact on our shore, which has been dated to about 3,000 years old.
Oh.
Here, yeah, it's true. Here in the past, it has been largely struggles of French, English, fishing, and hunting rights. Nuclear issues have not, fortunately, surfaced in Nova Scotia, but have begun in present day New Brunswick. There, the nuclear industry is promoting itself with money in attempts to align themselves with small groups of First Nations people with view of placing non-existent small modular reactors on their lands. Today, we will hear how nuclear issues have become major concerns with the Algonquin Nation, along with many others. Over to you, Justin and Edith.
So before I pass it on, I'm just going to give a quick introduction about our speakers. So today we have two incredible speakers. The first is Dr. Edith Gardell, who is a distinguished medical doctor, researcher, and public health professional with an extensive career spanning Europe, the USA, and Canada. She has expertise in internal and transplant medicine, hematology, and public health, with clinical experience in tropical medicine and research roles in leading institutions. Her research work includes significant contributions at the Ottawa General Hospital in partnership with the University of Ottawa and the Canadian Red Cross. Her public service roles include her work as clinical reviewer of experimental drugs at Health Canada, as associate director of the Radiation Protection Bureau, and associate executive director of the Emergency Preparedness and Response Directorate in Public Health. Her professional affiliations include the American Society of Histocompatibility and Immunogenetics, the New York Academy of Sciences, and the Canadian Association of Physicians for the Environment. Dr. Gardell's commitment to health and environmental justice is underscored by her engagement with Indigenous health through the Canadian Environmental Law Association and certification in Indigenous Canada from the University of Alberta, and advanced certification in alternative dispute resolution from the University of Windsor. In addition, today we have with us Justin Roy, who's a proud member of the Algonquin Nation and community of Kebaowek First Nation. He's a member of Kebaowek's Chief and Council, their consecutive term, and also holds the role of Director of Community Development for the Kebaowek First Nation. In his leadership roles, Justin works to promote the well-being, self-determination, and economic growth of his nation. As a counselor, he advocates for Indigenous rights, cultural preservation, protection of all lands, waters, and life that makes up the nation's unceded Algonquin territory and governance that reflects the needs and aspirations of his people. In his role as Director of Community Development, he leads initiatives aimed at improving community infrastructure, implementation of community-owned businesses and projects, supporting entrepreneurs of the community, managing and supporting culture and language teams in efforts towards cultural and language revitalization, and ensuring sustainable growth and opportunities for future generations. Justin's leadership is deeply rooted in his commitment to traditional values, community unity, and creating long-lasting positive change for Kebaowek First Nation. Welcome. Please join me in welcoming our incredible speakers. Thank you so much for joining us here today. We are so honored to have you speak.
Thank you, Daria. Quay, good evening. Bonsoir. My name is Justin Roy. Again, a proud member of Kebaowek First Nation. Like Darius mentioned, I'm the community's Director of Community Development by day, and then my other 24/7 role is a proud member of Chief and Council for Kebaowek, serving my third consecutive term. And one of my dossiers I hold in the community is our Lands and Resource Department. So I work very closely with all of our technical staff and outside experts and consultants regarding all consultation harmonization files happening on unceded Algonquin territory, and which segues me into letting you know that I'm coming to you from the unceded Algonquin territory of the Algonquin Nation. For those that aren't aware where Kebaowek is, we straddle the Ontario and Quebec border, and we're about an hour east of North Bay, Ontario. Again, a big chimigwich to the IPPNWC for inviting me to speak tonight. It really is a pleasure and honor to be here. Chimigwich to Dr. Nancy Covington for your kind opening words. Miigwech Dahe for your introduction, and a big chimigwich to everyone in attendance today, and really taking the time out of your days to be here to listen and I know listen with open hearts and open spirit. So I'm going to bring up my slide and start sharing my screen. I'm hoping everyone could see my screen before I full screen it.
Yep, that looks great.
Just a quick outline of things that I'm going to try and cover. I know we're pressed for time, and I could literally talk about these two issues and anything nuclear for days and days and days. So I'll try and keep it short and to the point. And I think the really heart of the discussion could happen in a good Q&A period, which I appreciate when we always have time to do so. I know we're going to touch up quickly over a little bit more about Kebaowek First Nation, a little history on just the Chalk River Nuclear Facility site in general, the different governing bodies, our involvement in history and what's going on regarding the near surface disposal facility. Going to actually touch on the Section 82 projects as well. You might be wondering what is Section 82 projects, but I'll be able to, as simply as I can, make that connection to nuclear and the issues that it's causing for not only Kebaowek but for the health and the environment. Some outstanding questions and concerns, overarching issues, and leading to a conclusion. Like I said earlier, Kebaowek First Nation, we're nestled on the beautiful Lake Kipawa. We're a small community. We have just south of 1,300 members. About 400 of those members live directly in the community. The following 900 or so live, for the most part, in the locale, but we do have members spread all across Turtle Island. We also do a monthly newsletter, and I know we send 2 copies to members in New Zealand. So majority of us are really close to home, but we are spread out across Canada. We're highly involved in a lot of consultation files. Like I said earlier, I help oversee our department, and to date we currently have 80 plus consultation harmonization files, which again all have equal priority and need our time and effort. So I just always like to share it because again, this nuclear file, especially related to NSDF, is taken on a mind of its own. It takes up a lot of our time and energy here in Kebaowek, and it really sometimes seems that we're strictly focused on nuclear when, again, there are a lot of other issues and whatnot happening on our territory that we're involved in. And my apologies for the noise in the background. I have a beagle and a border collie German Shepherd going crazy in the back here. So to the left is the beautiful community of Kebaowek. To the right, I like to show this map too. That Rocket Kelly. Apologies. A map kind of showing where Kebaowek is in relation to North Bay and Ottawa. You also see the location of the Chalk River site, and a big question we always get asked is, hey, Justin, Kebaowek is 160 kilometers north of the Chalk River site. You're upstream. What are you really concerned about? No, nothing is going to ever physically impact you. And my response to that is that just because we have been placed here in Kebaowek on the beautiful shores of Lake Kipawa by the government in the early 70s does not mean that we're not still responsible for all of our territories and waters that make up our unceded Algonquin territory. And almost all the land, save for maybe the left of the little icon showing Kebaowek, you are looking at unceded Algonquin territory. The territory itself, we're talking from Kirkland Lake, Ontario, all the way south to Ottawa, Ontario, east to Montreal, north to about a little bit northeast of Val-d'Or, Quebec, and crossing back over to Kirkland Lake, Ontario. So as you can see, it's a very vast territory, and not any one community that makes up the nation was able to speak on behalf of that whole territory. We all have an equal voice and equal responsibilities to our lands and waters and the territory that we call home. Chalk River Nuclear Facility, again, a little history, and by being involved in nuclear, I've really come to clearly learn a lot about nuclear, but also get a good history on Chalk River. Again, being where I'm from, I've driven, south of my community to go to Ottawa, or if you ever need to venture into southern Quebec, you need to pass through the highway that drives through Chalk River, Ontario, and I've seen the signs, for Deep River, Canada's pioneer in nuclear, and that nuclear goes on. But the way the highway goes and how small Chalk River is, you would never know that it has such a sprawling complex that sits right on the Ottawa River to Kitchissippi. The complex itself is what you can see to the right, and it's massive. And that's just the site where they have infrastructure. The total Chalk River Laboratory site, we're talking about 3,700 hectares. Again, that's 3,700 hectares. It's an absolutely massive, massive area. A little bit of other history, again, quickly, Chalk River was established in the 1940s along the Ottawa River. Unfortunately, like most nuclear establishments, putting themselves right adjacent to large, important bodies of water. And something to also keep in mind is that, when this site was, chosen in the 40s, it was done so, on unceded Algonquin territory without the consultation of the nation. This is where the development of the first domestic nuclear reactors, aided in development of the first atomic bombs, and has led to the producing of isotopes used globally for medical purposes. A cool question not cool, but a question I like to ask people when they ask about my involvement in Chalk River and NSDF and what's going on there. I always like to ask people if they know where did the world's first nuclear reactor meltdown happen, and a lot of people want to think Chernobyl, maybe even throw in Fukushima if they're not even aware of Chernobyl and what happened in the past. And they're always quite surprised when I let them know that it actually happened in Canada, and it wasn't just the first one, but also the second as well. So I also encourage people to check out an article in the news outlet called The Walrus, which is titled Chalk River, the Forgotten Nuclear Accident. Really tells the whole story as to what happened in that nuclear reactor meltdown. And at the end of the day, it was a malfunction in a communication between, I don't know if it was walkie-talkies or a communication device, where one gentleman said to press this button, it didn't come in clearly, and he ended up pressing another one, leading to a reactor meltdown. So it really speaks to how easily, when we're dealing with nuclear, accidents can happen, and they have happened and will continue to happen. Another cool piece of the history is that ex-U.S. President Jimmy Carter was a young Navy officer, and he was actually one of the people called when Canada was running into this nuclear reactor meltdown. Canada called the United States for help. The United States knew of a man named Jimmy Carter who was good at cleaning up messes, and they called him in, and he was one of the gentlemen that, I guess, part of a team to come and clean up the mess at Chalk River in that first nuclear reactor meltdown. And from reading, he also learned that him and his team, when they would have to go in to fix what was going on, they would go do so in 90-second intervals. It was go into that place, turn a bolt for 90 seconds, leave because of the exposure they were putting onto themselves. Chalk River is also housing, I believe it's upwards of 300,000 cubic meters of nuclear waste. This is all legacy waste that's been produced over the 80 plus years at Chalk River. And I'll also be the first to say that we know there is an issue at Chalk River, a nuclear waste issue that needs to be solved. There's no denying that. But at the end of the day, some of the ideas they have in trying to clean up that mess, as I'll elaborate a little bit further, are clearly not the solutions to that problem. When you drive on this site, it really is astonishing when you see the multiple different areas where they store nuclear waste. You can see one area where it's stacks upon stacks of shipping containers filled with waste. You see another area that just has these large steel silos that are filled with nuclear waste. There's even some sites where, again, it's just containment, I guess, types of containment where they have nuclear waste inside, and that containment item is buried in sand. So it really is astonishing to see. Yes, you see this beautiful, looks like a beautiful site, almost a small town adjacent to the Ottawa River, but there's a lot of stuff that goes on down there. And by us getting involved in the NSDF project back in 2019, it's really opened our eyes as to what has taken place at Chalk River, what continues to take place in Chalk River, and their ideas for the future for Chalk River. Before getting a little bit further into, again, NSDF and some of the projects we're involved in, I always like to try and explain to people, again, for those that don't know, just how connected the Canadian government and nuclear industry are. Because it's really important to keep that in mind as I continue speaking, because it's because of this connection that it makes it very hard, especially even for an Indigenous community that no, we do have maybe a few more rights and opportunities to be able to speak and get involved, but because of this interconnectedness between government and industry, it leads to countless issues for communities like Kebaowek. And I'm going to read a little something that regarding AECL. And again, for those that don't know, it's the Atomic Canada Energy Limited. It's the Canada's Crown Corporation responsible for Canada's radioactive waste, and CNL is the Canadian Nuclear Laboratories. They're the nuclear industry that's paid to take care of all of Canada's nuclear waste on a day-to-day basis. And again, I'll read this out loud. And again, you could make of it what you want, and then I'll let you know where it comes from. AECL, as a federal crown corporation, it receives funding from the Government of Canada to enable the development of nuclear science and technology and to manage the Government of Canada's radioactive waste liabilities. Since 2015, AECL has delivered this mandate to a government-owned, contractor-operated model, also known as GOCO, which has a number of issues in and of itself because of confidentiality arises when trying to ask who is who, which means that a private sector organization, CNL, is responsible for managing and operating AECL sites. With this arrangement, both AECL, the owner, and CNL, operator, are enduring entities with contractor being either renewed or replaced through a competitive procurement process. Under the GOCO operated model, AECL owns the sites, facilities, assets, and intellectual property, and responsibility for environmental remediation and radioactive waste management. CNL is responsible for the day-to-day operations of the site. This arrangement allows AECL to use the expertise of private sector to achieve the best possible outcomes for the decommissioning and waste management program and to transform Chalk River Laboratories into a world-class nuclear facility, all while reducing costs and risks to people of Canada. Now, when I read that aloud, especially for others, it kind of clues in that you could see that connection between government and industry. And what I read you right there is directly from the AECL website about who they are. So it's not like I made this up about how connected they are and how one relies on the other. No, this is coming word for word from the AECL website. So I always like to draw people's attention to that when trying to speak to some of the issues and concerns that we have when we're dealing with government and industry regarding nuclear radioactive waste and whatnot. Today's big topic again is the near surface disposal facility. This is something now I've been dealing with since 2019. We're in end of 2024. And we're going to be involved in this for the foreseeable future, irregardless of the final outcome. I have some kind of key points that feel free to take in, and I'll just read some other talking points that I had. For those that don't know, the NSDF is a giant radioactive mound known as the NSDF. It was approved by the CNSC, Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission. For those that aren't aware, it's the safety commission that's responsible for the approval or non-approval of nuclear projects in Canada. And the CNSC gave the approval for the NSDF project this past January 8th, 2024. What CNL, AECL, and by approving the project, CNSC want us to believe about the NSDF is that this engineered containment mound, or in simpler terms, a glorified landfill, is the solution to their low and intermediate waste problems. But is that really the truth? Is that really the best solution that the minds of CNL, AECL, and CNSC can come up with? From all the numerous calls and meetings that I've been in, I have a really hard time to believe that, especially considering the following. This site sits less than 1 kilometer away from the Kitchissippi, the Ottawa River. This site was chosen for its proximity to existing leaking waste sites at Chalk River. As I explained earlier, there's upwards of 300,000 cubic meters of waste currently on site, and it's going to be situated on the side of a hill, and they like to focus on this. It's like they say it's on the side of a hill that slopes away from the Ottawa River. But what they don't tell you is that slope, that opposite side of the mountain, the hill, flows directly into Perch Creek. Perch Creek flows directly into Perch Lake flows directly into Perch Creek directly into the Kitchissippi, into the Ottawa River, less than 1 kilometer away. This enormous mound will hold 1 million tons of radioactive and other hazardous waste. So remember, there's already 300,000 tons of waste on site. That means upwards of an additional 700,000 tons, cubic meters of waste, will be brought into the near surface mound. And I say a mound, again, for those that aren't aware, for the first 30 or 50 years, once this facility is built, it won't have a cap on it. So while they take that time to put all the waste inside the mound, there will be no roof on this mound. So that means day to day, year to year, all the rain, all the snow melt, all the environment that Mother Nature can throw at it is going to fall inside this facility. I'll touch on some of the I guess the mitigation measures they believe they have in place to deal with this, but I always like to kind of try and paint that picture that they strongly believe that all their mitigation measures will capture every single bit of rain, snow melt, what have you, that's going to fall inside this facility while its roof is open for the first 30 to 50 years. The NSDF will be upwards of 7 stories in height and cover an area the size of 70 NHL hockey rinks. It's actually going to cover an area 37 hectares in size. So that earlier picture I showed of you of Kebaowek First Nation, our community is roughly, and you don't quite see it all, is just under 60 hectares. So now we're talking about a giant radioactive waste mound right next to the Ottawa River that's going to be 40 hectares in size. That's 2/3 the size of the community of Kebaowek. That is how large this mound is going to be. Water destined for this mound has accumulated over 8 decades of operation at Chalk River, but waste will also be imported for emplacement inside the mound. It's going to contain dozens of radioactive and hazardous materials and tons of heavy metals. Radioactive materials destined for the dump include tritium, carbon-14, strontium-90, 4 types of plutonium, and up to 6.3 tons of uranium. We're also talking about elements such as cobalt-60 and cesium-137, sources in this dump that would give off so much intense gamma radiation that workers will have to use lead shielding to avoid dangerous radiation exposures. The IAEA says these are intermediate level waste and require emplacement underground, but that is not what they're doing here. That is why it is called a near surface disposal facility. The Algonquin Nation, 10 of the 11 communities that make up the Algonquin Nation, and the Assembly of First Nations, an organization that represents the 600 plus Indigenous and First Nation communities across Canada, have vehemently opposed this project. More importantly, the United Nations Declarations on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, to which Canada is a signatory to and also put into Canadian law in 2021 with the UNDA Act, clearly states under Article 29.2 that no storage or disposal of hazardous materials shall take place in the lands or territories of Indigenous peoples without their free, prior, and informed consent. Something that clearly didn't happen here. We're also talking about a giant mound that's going to be right adjacent to drinking water for millions of Canadians. That will be threatened by this dump. It's not a matter of if, it's when. And this is sometimes where people seem to think that I'm trying to be fear mongering or scare people, but these are facts. These are the things that we're having to deal with, and this is the project that's being proposed on our territory. This mound is expected to leak during the operation and break down due to erosion. Studies have predicted that several types of leakage will occur during the filling and after the closure. We're talking about waste being added to the mound would be exposed to the elements. Remember, there's going to be no roof on this mound. Tritium as a radioactive water would leach in very large amounts from the mound. We're talking about heavy storm events. Could erode the mound's surface and wash toxic substances into low areas. The capacity for stormwater ponds would be exceeding during the extreme rainfall events. And there's numerous other possible ways the facility might leak during operation. And that's during operation. That's the first 50 years of this project. The idea for the NSDF is that this mound is supposed to last upwards of 550 years under perfect conditions. 550 years. They believe they have all issues and everything accounted for the next 550 years. As an Indigenous person, we try and live and guide our lives by the seven grandfather teachings. And in those teachings, we always talk about thinking 7 generations into the future. 7 generations is roughly about 150 years. So a lot of times when Indigenous peoples speak to projects and try and talk about thinking before thinking and 7 generations into the future, we get laughed at, we get told that that's unrealistic. But now that the coin has been flipped and the scenario is different, where we're on the other side asking, how can you be so forward thinking 550 years? It falls on deaf ears. Experts say the waste will remain radioactive and hazardous for thousands of years. The IAEA says waste like those produced by Chalk River laboratories are likely to be intermediate level and in some cases even high level, which again should require placement in deep geological depositories. Yes, they like to claim that a lot of the waste going inside the mound is low level, and I will agree. We're talking about decommissioned buildings, dirt and wood, hospital gowns and whatnot. Yes, that stuff is going inside the mound, but it's the percentage of the waste, the small percentage of that really highly radioactive. That's the stuff that we need to be worried about. Other issues regarding NSDF is that more than 140 communities in Quebec and Ontario are opposed to the NSDF. I know it's Canadian taxpayers that are paying, but it's a multinational consortium that is calling the shots. Chalk River Laboratories is owned by the government in Canada. Cleanup of the site, the NSDF was originally estimated to be $8 billion in 2015. $8 billion in 2015, I'm sure, is a lot more in today's market. Since this consortium took over, cost of Canadian taxpayers for the operation and cleanup at Canada's nuclear labs has ballooned from $336 million per year to over $1.5 billion a year. That is how much this industry, CNL, is being paid to take care of Canada's nuclear waste, all the expense of taxpayers. And you might be asking, who is this consortium? We're talking about Alkins Realis, the formerly SNC-Lavalin, which was barred by the World Bank for 10 years and faced charges in Canada of fraud, bribery, and corruption. Another member is the Texas-based Fluor Corporation, which in the past paid $4 million to resolve allegations of financial fraud related to nuclear waste cleanup work at a U.S. site. And the other partner in this is Texas-based Jacobs Engineering, which recently acquired CH2M, an original consortium member that agreed to pay $18.5 million to settle federal criminal charges at a nuclear cleanup site in the U.S. So these are the types of people that we are dealing with here when we're talking about the NSDF project. Construction of the NSDF would also destroy critical habitat for protected species. We're talking about endangered blanding turtles, several species at risk migratory birds, and like the golden wing warblers, Canada warblers, and whippoorwills. We've also been able to show that there are eastern wolves that navigate throughout the CRL site. The eastern wolf, just in the last couple of months, has had its status raised from species of special concern to threatened. We're also talking about a number of active bear dens that might not have federal protections, but they do have provincial protections under the Ontario Endangered Species Act. So just listening, when I have to explain not just members of my community but others, what's your involvement in NSDF and why are you so opposed? When we start talking, just listing out issues like the ones I spoke to, or even the facts that are on my screen, it's easy to see why communities like Kebaowek are in opposition. So now you tell me, is the NSDF project really the solution to Chalk River Laboratories radioactive waste? Is this really the best solution when taking the impacts to health and the environment it will have into consideration? I find it very, very hard to believe.
Hi, Justin. I'm so sorry. Your slides are, oh, perfect. Okay, now they finally changed. They just weren't working before. Perfect. So my
Oh, gotcha.
apologies.
Yeah, just quickly again, no, we had that earlier photo where we were looking at the Chalk River, but as you can see now to the right, that's the Chalk River Laboratory site. Arrow pointing to the NSDF site. You'll see in the top left-hand part of the picture, you see a small body of water. That's what they call Perch Creek. So a lot of the waste and leachate is going to flow directly from the NSDF facility directly into Perch Lake. On the bottom left-hand side of my screen, you'll see a triangular beach. That beach is called Point au Baptême. It's a beach that, Point au Baptême also holds a lot of cultural significance to the Algonquin Nation. Somewhere between, it's tough to see on the picture, between Point au Baptême and the Chalk River main site is where Perch Creek flows directly into the Ottawa River. So as you can see by looking at this map and where NSDF is going to be, where Perch Lake is, how Perch Creek flows directly from there into the Ottawa River, you can see on how when leaching does happen, it will make its way quickly into the Ottawa River. And if a disaster was ever to happen, you can see again that it'll just happen that much quicker, in reaching the Ottawa River. For those that aren't aware, again, with the decision of the CNSC in January this year, Kebaowek and as well as many others were provided 30-day opportunity to decide, do we want to take this to the legal route, or do we want to just allow this project to happen? So within those 30 days, Kebaowek decided that, with all the work that we've already done, what we know is going to happen, that we just can't roll over and let this project be. So Kebaowek decided to file for a judicial review on the NSDF decision. Some main points to consider here. Kebaowek is challenging the January 9th, the CNSC decision authorizing the construction of a nuclear waste disposal facility. The commission acted in a manner that was inconsistent with UNDRIP and in breach of the duty to consult Kebaowek. Kebaowek told the commission that the UN Declaration for the Rights of Indigenous Peoples and Canada's UNDRIP Act should be considered by the commission. Authorizing the NSDF without obtaining Kebaowek's FPIC, free prior informed consent, violates the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. Its process was not fair to Kebaowek. And Kebaowek has asked the federal court to set aside the commission's decision and declare that the commission breached its duty to consult Kebaowek. So this case was heard in July 10th and 11th of this past year. We were also very fortunate that the judge that was overseeing the judicial review was a Justice Blackhawk. She is a Indigenous judge that has a strong background clearly in things like Section 35, the rights of Indigenous peoples, UNDRIP. So Kebaowek was very, very fortunate that the judge that was named to proceed over this judicial review is a judge of Indigenous background and knows and clearly understands the ramifications of this decision, not just for Kebaowek, but for all Indigenous peoples across Turtle Island when it comes to UNDRIP and UNDA. Now, what is Kebaowek asking for in its judicial review? That the federal court set aside the commission's decision and quash the amendments to this Canadian Nuclear's license that authorized the construction of the nuclear facility. That the federal court declared that the commission breached its duty to consult Kebaowek by failing to secure Kebaowek's free prior informed consent. And as an alternative remedy, that the federal court send the decision back to the commission to reconsider and determine if the duty to consult was adequately discharged, considering the UN Declaration, Canada's UNDRIP Act, and other aspects to the duty to consult. What we're hoping to achieve again is that the Canadian Nuclear may have to reapply to amend its license. The commission may have to redo its consultation process to make it more fair and align with UNDRIP, meeting go back to day one. It could mean that the commission would need to seek Kebaowek or other Indigenous nations' consent before approving the project. And it would also help protect species at risk present around the site. What are some next steps from here? Again, we've been in the wait and see game where it happened in July. We're now in the end of November. But like I stated earlier, Justice Blackhawk made it very clear at the end of the proceedings that she's going to take her time in making this decision because she knows, one, the importance of this project. Proceeding or not on unceded Algonquin territory is a very important issue. But like I touched on earlier, the fact that it's one of the first court cases going to federal court regarding UNDRIP and the new UNDA Act here in Canada. So she also knows that the decision she's going to make is going to set a big time precedent again for communities like Kebaowek when trying to move the argument of UNDRIP and UNDA and whether that's really a part of Canadian law or not. So that's quickly, again, the NSDF project. I keep rambling on and on, but Section 82 projects. And why do I want to touch on Section 82 projects and what are they? Section 82 assessments are projects on federal lands that are considered designated projects and thus do not require a full impact assessment. So for those that don't know what Canada's new Impact Assessment Act of 2019, which has just gone through Superior Court and amending some changes to it, major projects usually have to go through a full assessment. But there is also a Section 82 project, which again means not having to go through a full impact assessment. The project list, so designated projects, is very narrow, and it's again, it being a new act hasn't made its way, unfortunately, through different legal proceedings to really define in detail what a designated project is or isn't. But unfortunately, this means that many nuclear projects are not included as a designated project and fall underneath Section 82 projects. Here's a list of designated projects here's the list of designated projects does not include SMRs and large scale reactor projects. And if you're on this call listening, I'm sure we all know of the big time push across Canada and the world for SMRs right now. The decommissioning and refurbishment activities of nuclear sites, facilities and sites, activities to prepare, construct, and operate radioactive waste facilities, and the key word there being radioactive waste facility. Because they don't put the name or the word storage or something related to that, changes whether it's, again, falls underneath Section 82 or having to go through a more fulsome impact assessment. So they're very careful with the words that they use when naming different facilities or projects. But regardless of their significance, Section 82 projects require only a 5-part checklist, which, again, I'll save you from going over that in detail. But some of the, Section 82 of the Impact Assessment Act in Canada, it deals with project exemptions, basically, allowing certain projects or activities to be exempt from the usual federal environmental assessment process. While the intent of Section 82 is to streamline the process for certain projects deemed to have minimal environmental or health impacts, there are several problems associated with its application and the broader implications for environmental protection, Indigenous rights, and public participation. And here's just a few: lack of transparency and accountability, limited public consultation. It means reduced scrutiny, potential for inadequate consideration of environmental and health impacts, undermining Indigenous rights and involvement, potential for abuse and overuse of exemptions, reduced capacity for mitigation and monitoring, public and environmental advocacy concerns, and it kind of just goes on and on. So again, the intent was there for allowing maybe the development of a large-scale parking lot to be able to pass through quickly, but whenever that list includes nuclear and projects can fall under nuclear, you quickly see why this becomes a problem. Currently, right now, again, when a proponent meets that 5-part checklist, once they meet that, all they have to do from there is put their Section 82 project on the Impact Assessment Agency's website on their public registry, and then it sits there for 30 days, which kind of leads me into my next topic, what I'm going to speak about and why I was explaining what Section 82 projects are and why this is an issue for Kebaowek moving forward. So again, they do their work, they meet the 5 points, they put it up on a public registry where they are not mandated to let the public know. If you happen to be someone that likes to look on these websites, you might come across it, you may not. But just currently, just to kind of explain, the number of Section 82 projects that are at the CNL site, we're talking about a cask facility project, intermediate level waste storage area, building demolition project, heel storage removal project, multi-purpose waste handling facility, and more importantly, the modernized combined electrolysis and catalytic exchange, MCECE. So I'll speak a little bit about what it is and some key talking points. But how did we get involved in this? And this is just us again finding out about Section 82 projects, asking what they are, which ones are taking place at Chalk River, which took a number of months. I mean, if you could believe that, it took months of us having to ask, what is your current list of Section 82 projects? And they finally provided it to us. No, we have these, and one that came up was this MCECE project. Because the only thing on the public registry is maybe a 5 or 6 word paragraph with a heading. That's all you have. So we asked, what is this? Can you provide a little bit more information? They sent us a small package brochure presentation that, here, read it over. This is what this is. Fortunately enough, again, we were able to, from being involved in NSDF, we had some external experts and consultants review what it is and came back to us with a more detailed explanation as to what the MCECE project is. And it's outstanding that this is a Section 82 project, and that if it wasn't for Kebaowek catching this, this is something that would already be approved, and I wouldn't say breaking ground, but working towards the breaking of ground. Fortunately, because we caught it, we've put in a lot of comments and concerns, and we're still waiting to hear back as to what those are. Quickly,
Oh, Justin, oh, I'm so sorry. I just wanted to give a quick time warning. I just want to make sure you have enough time for Q&A and just in case. Thank you
Oh,
so
we're at
much.
8:43. Oh boy, like
No. Thank you so much. You're
sorry,
sharing such
Edith.
incredible information. I just wanted to thank you.
Yeah, not a problem. So I'll make this again quick. So basically, what the whole idea of this MCECE is that it's going to be a facility that is going to help remove all the tritium from the heavy radioactive wastewater that is on the site. They say that they're doing this under the guise of trying to lower Canada's nuclear waste by we're going to be getting rid of all this water, and when we're going to treat it and we're going to throw it into the Ottawa River. But at the end of the day, they're going to have the almost pure tritium. And for those that aren't aware, there's only a couple of uses or markets for tritium. Those being for, I believe it's like fluorescent or self-illuminating lights. Scientific research like fusion reactors, to which CNL has signed multiple agreements with companies the last couple of years getting involved in fusion, and the nuclear weapons industry. And for those, again, tritium is currently going for almost $30,000 a gram, and each one of these containers that will be filled up with tritium will hold about 50 grams of tritium. So we're talking big money here at the Chalk River site. Press for time, so again, a lot of ongoing concerns and questions, that Kebaowek has, how will the removal of tritium from nuclear waste at the MCEC facility affect the surrounding environment, particularly the Kitchissippi? What are the cumulative health risks to Kebaowek and the surrounding communities from both the NSDF and MCEC facilities? Again, I didn't get to touch on what type of tritium levels and releases into the environment to the water are going to be had throughout this project. It really is outstanding, and again, I really wish I almost had hours and hours to be able to speak to you all here, but as you can see, I'm very kind of passionate about this. It's something that, again, it's one of the things I'm responsible for, and it takes up hours and hours of every single day and every single week because of our involvement in NSDF and other related projects like the MCECE. But to allow some time, my apologies, Edith. But if people want to learn more and they want to support our cause, again, to learn more about Kebaowek and our involvement in NSDF, you could visit our website at stopnuclearwaste.com. If you want to be able to really get active and get involved, I invite you to check out our campaign page at raventrust.com. And to learn more about the MCEC project and Kebaowek's concerns, you could visit the link before. So again, really, Chimigwich for listening. And I know I might have rambled on here. I just had a lot more I wanted to say, but time really does fly by when I get started talking on nuclear. So Chimigwich, thank you. Merci for listening.
No, thank you so much, Justin. A huge round of applause. It was so incredible to learn from you, and also just very appreciative of your time. And I know a lot of people are probably gonna have a lot of amazing questions for you following this presentation. So thank you so much. And if everyone can give a quick round of applause before I'll pass it off on to Edith. Oh, Dr. Gardell, I think you're muted. Oh, perfect.
Okay. Yeah, so I cannot tell you how grateful I am for your presentation. Justin, this is fantastic. You have probably opened everybody's eyes. And I have protested with you, as you know, in January. And I've met several people from your community several times, but this was really a very eye-opening presentation. Many thanks. I want just to speak a little bit. I go through the slide quickly because of time pressure, but I want to quickly bring about some health and safety concerns about the impact of nuclear waste. The continuation. How to move on the slides? Yeah.
You can either press on the screen or just again on the left and right keys at the bottom.
It just doesn't function.
If your keyboard's not working, also Daria or I could share your slides if that's preferred, and you could just tell us when.
Yeah, maybe you do that and you pass the slides and then I can just speak to it. Okay?
That sounds great. I can definitely do that. Sorry, just 1 second. Just pulling them up.
Okay. Okay, the second slide, the next slide, please. If we press on the dams of the Ottawa River, press on that. And then control enter. Can you please press on the dams of the Ottawa River and then control enter, and then it opens up.
Okay, 1 second. I'm gonna have to reshare my screen 1 second. My apologies. There we go.
Yes. Okay. This, since time immemorial, this is the Kitchissippi-Ottawa River watershed, which is part of the vast territory of the Algonquin unceded nation, unceded territory. And we can see here that where we have deep river in that area, there is the Chalk River located. The Kitchissippi watershed provided clean and safe drinking water, not only to the area of the watershed, but also to the highly populated areas of Ottawa, Gatineau, and Montreal, of about 5 million people. Next slide, please. We have talked about Chalk River, and I just would like to add that the remediation of the terrible partial reactor meltdown in 1952 was rated a 5 on the scale of 1 to 7 for nuclear accidents. 7 was the Fukushima and the Chernobyl disaster. So it was on a high scale. And the remediation, although all people, close to 1,000 people participated in the remediation, it was incomplete, and leakage occurred into the sand, into the water, into the earth, and from the various local water bodies down into the river. And the same happened in 1958 with a second accident, and also with the rate of between 4 and 5 on the accident scale, where particularly radioactive particles, fume, dust, air, and water were produced. And people had actually sucked up with vacuum cleaner glowing particles of uranium fission products. Then the mediation was incomplete and it was reopened hastily after 6 months. Next slide, please. When we talk about ionizing radiation and radiation effect, the World Health Organization classifies this as the exposure to ionizing radiation into planned, existing, and emergency situation. We talk here about planned exposure, and it results from the deliberate introduction and operation of sources of ionizing radiation for medical use, for diagnosis and treatment of patients, and non-medical use. Please, next slide. We look at the ionizing radiation from a wide electromagnetic spectrum of low frequency and high frequency waves. The low frequency waves are non-ionizing, and we can see here power lines, radio, TV, cell phones, microwaves, infrared devices, visible light, all that is non-ionizing. But when we come to solar light, we see already that there is a high frequency and there's ionizing radiation produced. And we know that there is a high likelihood that cancers in susceptible individuals occurs. And we know melanoma is the fastest growing cancer. Then there are the various particles and photon rays, alpha, beta, gamma, and X-rays, and all these produce radioactive waste. Next slide, please. When we look at alpha radiation, they arise from the decay of the heaviest of the radioactive elements, uranium, radium, and polonium. And we need to connect this with Dr. Marie Curie, a brilliant scientist from Poland who lived in France, married Pierre Curie, a French physicist, and both of them cleaned, discovered, and purified uranium and radium and polonium. And for that work, they were awarded together with Henri Becquerel, another French scientist, the Nobel Prize in Physics in 1903. And again, Marie Curie got another Nobel Prize for chemistry this time in 1918. However, she was unaware of the dangers of what she had discovered. Both of them were unaware. And they paid a high price for their health. Pierre Curie died in 1906, and Marie Curie became increasingly sick, and she had carried in her pocket a vessel with pure radium and showed it to people, not knowing that that was a heavily contaminated and ionizing radiation producing subject. She was showing it, and her hands became crippled, and she was increasingly ill and died in 1934 from agranulocytosis, which is a complete disintegration and destruction of the bone marrow. Next. I should say that both Curies were entombed in Paris in a tomb which was especially lead protected and has a completely thick lead wall around it forever because it's so radioactive, and their bodies were also radioactive. In terms of alpha radiation, uranium, radium, and polonium, thus causes, as we heard, strong tissue damage when the alpha emitters are inhaled, swallowed, and entered through skin lesion and release their energy into few cells first, and then create more severe damage to cells and DNA. Uranium-238, which is abundantly here in our area and causes the lack of drinkable water, potable water. Many indigenous nations live from bottled water for many years. The half-life of uranium-238 is 4.5 billion years. That is the age of our Earth. Radium-88, over 4,000 years, and polonium-138 for 40 days. Next, please. We measure ionizing radiation with two major measurements. The Becquerel, in honor of Henri Becquerel, who discovered radioactivity, and we measure the quantification of the radioactive material in present and its rate of decay. The sievert, in contrast, named after the Swedish physicist Rolf Maximilian Sievert, measures the quantification of the biological effects of the radiation on living organisms and living tissue. So the sievert is mainly what medical people are concerned with, the radiation protection, and the dosimetry in diagnostic and treatment procedures is measured in sieverts. And you will see in every radiologist wears a dosimetry measurement device, which is constantly monitored to check on their exposure to ionizing radiation. Next, please. Here I just collected a few radiations from various sources. Just go over it. Living 50 kilometers from a nuclear power plant per year, you are exposed to approximately as much as to eating one banana, 10 microsieverts, an average daily dose from natural background, 20 for chest x-ray, 600 for mammogram, 1,000 or 1 millisievert dose limit per person per year, 3.65 millisieverts, an average annual doses from natural background, 5.8 for chest CT, 20 for full body CT, and then there is an incredible natural annual radiation dose in Area Preta, which is a beach with monzonite, which has a very high natural ionizing radiation in Brazil. And 5,000 millisieverts are the lethal human dosage, which is a 50% risk of death within 30 days after a rapidly received dose. Next, please. Beta radiation is another major particle which we are talking about because we are talking about tritium. You can read up here, and I just mentioned that tritium is found in the upper atmosphere, where cosmic rays strike nitrogen molecules in the air, and it is produced during nuclear weapons explosion and tests, and is a byproduct in nuclear reactors. And Justin talked already about this very clearly, how important tritium is. And tritium can be gas, but is mostly tritiated water because it interacts with oxygen from water. The particles radiate further and penetrate deeper than alpha particles, but are less damaging to tissue and DNA because the ionization they produce is more widely spaced and can be stopped by a thin layer of clothing or aluminum. They're hazardous when they are inhaled or getting under damaged skin and are widely dispersed in the body and excreted in 30 days roughly. Please, next slide. Here is just a collection of drinking water limits for tritium. You can look at this, you get probably the slides, and you can look at it, at them. Finland has the highest because of their rocky, very strong radiation, natural radiation structures. And interestingly, Canada is also quite high, so is Russia and Switzerland. Next, please. Here you see just the annual tritium discharge from nuclear facilities. Striking is the amount of France, because France has the highest amount of electricity production from nuclear fission and nuclear reactors. It's strikingly higher than all others, but in the second place is Canada with its Bruce nuclear, its Darlington, and its Pickering plants. Next, please. gamma rays are not particles, but they are pure weightless energy. They're called photons. And unlike alpha and beta, with both energy and mass, gamma have the shortest wavelength and highest energy and are very, very toxic and hard to stop. Gamma rays are strong radiation hazards for the entire body and can penetrate barriers that can stop alpha and beta particles. Because of their penetration power, thick layers of dense material like lead or concrete are required to stop this kind of ionizing radiation. They pass through the body and they cause damaging ionization of tissue and DNA. Next, please. X-rays were discovered by William Conrad Röntgen, and they are mainly used for medical purposes. We all have had X-rays, and they are pure photons of pure energy. Although they are similar with X and gamma rays, there are some basic properties which are similar. However, the X-rays are emitted from processes outside the nucleus, whereas gamma rays originate inside the nucleus. They have a lower energy and therefore are less penetrating than gamma rays. X-rays can be produced naturally or by machines, and the medical application account for 98% of the population dose contribution from all human-made resources and present 20% of total population exposure. Worldwide, annually, 4.2 billion diagnostic radiology exams are performed, 40 million nuclear medicine procedures, and 8.5 million radiotherapy treatments are given. Radio treatment is, of course, a controversial treatment because we give ionizing radiation to heal patients, and we have side effects due to that fact. But sometimes, in discussion with the patient, doctors decide to use radiotherapy to kill the tumor and therefore enable the patient to survive the tumor with other helps. The most, excuse me. The next, please, next slide. The most controversial treatment with radiation is total body irradiation. It's only used in very relatively rare instances in leukemias, lymphomas, myelomas, agranulocytosis, the same thing which Madame Dr. Curie had. And it is basically artificially destroying the entire bone marrow in order to enable the patient with these diseases to get a bone marrow graft, a transplant from a healthy person, mostly relatives, and therefore can grow a new bone marrow and heal from its disease. So this is an incredibly hard decision to make. And I learned in Seattle bone marrow transplant, and I must say it is a very incredible procedure and experience to have experienced that. Next, please. The side effects of TBI in children are foreseeable according to the bone marrow deficiency, with all the cells for blood production and immune response missing, and the vessels are not healing, so the patients are bleeding profusely. But when all this heals, there are still late side effects for lifelong, practically, with cataracts, decrease in growth, hormone problems, sterility, and cancer. So it's a very difficult decision to transplant a patient, but if it's a matter of life and death, most people want to choose life. Next, please. Now, very recently, we have a new policy in Canada for radioactive waste management and decommissioning. The top priorities: health, safety, and security of populations, protection of the environment, and implementation of Canada's international commitments for the peaceful use of nuclear energy. That includes the Treaty of the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons and, specific to nuclear waste, the Joint Convention of the Safety on Spent Fuel Management and on the Safety of Radioactive Waste Management under the auspices of the International Atomic Energy Association, including the requirement to make certain that all radioactive waste in Canada is managed safely for generations to come. This is a wonderful policy. Next, please. And it has a policy vision. The vision is, number one, protecting health and safety and security of people and the environment, ensuring nuclear non-proliferation. Second, inclusive engagement, openness, and transparency on radioactive waste and management and decommissioning matters. And third, the government commits to the implementation of United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People. Justin talked about that, in consultation and collaboration with Indigenous peoples with regards to radioactive waste management and decommissioning. It says, within our commitment to engagement is the recognition that Indigenous peoples are rights holders and that this has important implication in how they are engaged and consulted, as appropriate by the federal government, in particular on radioactive waste management and decommissioning matters. And fourth, the global excellence in the field of radioactive waste management and decommissioning. However, the timeline for this very great vision is 2050. And 2050 is a generation from now. Next, please. The reality, and we have heard that already from Justin, is that under the UNDRIP and pronounced 2007, since 2021, we have an act which is now the law. And all that was prior to the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission decision in Chalk River to build this waste mound in Kitchissippi, and before the obligatory free prior informed consent by the Algonquin-Anishinaabe. In 2012, the Federal Environmental Impact Assessment Act, which was exclusively used by the CNSC in Chalk River to assess the environmental layout, has been successfully changed by the Canadian Environmental Law Association in 2023, and it needs revisions. And now, as we heard already, on the 30th of October, the nuclear developer tapped to build the reactor at Chalk River, which should process the tritium, has called for a court-supervised sale. That means Chapter 11 under the US Bankruptcy Code. So that is the sad reality. Next, please. We can look at the uranium fact. I think you get all the slides. You can look at them, and it shows clearly that Canada has a strong history of nuclear reactor technologies with the CANDU, and it's a big exporter and also producer of uranium. And it's mentioned here by the World Nuclear Foundation that it does not emit greenhouse gases. However, whether it does not mean that it is a green technology. That should not be mixed up. It accounts for 14% of Canada's electricity in 2021. Next, please. The one country which has truly worked from the beginning of a nuclear waste facility to the final resting place of any nuclear waste and waste is the Finnish repository of Onkalo. They have planned and tested for 40 years And once this thing is filled up, it will be sealed to stay undisturbed for over 100,000 years. It is built with over 400 meter deep under bedrock, and the final disposal can withstand earthquakes, future glaciations. They checked for future glacial ages, up to 1 million years, and stress caused by continental ice. And here they celebrated in September this year the 20-year of the first anniversary of the first blast for Onkalo. Next, please. This is responsible waste management. And it's according to the international definition of waste disposal, where all the analysis, observations, and proofs have to be used to justify the reliability of the assessment made by the long-term safety of final disposal. That's the important thing, to store it safely, waste, and finally. Next, please. For human safety, the World Health Organization reminds us and emphasizes risk management, risk assessment, and risk communication. And we must focus on radiation protection to minimize radiation exposure altogether. In any case, by enhancing the justification and optimization of radiological procedures and preventing accidental and unintended exposure. Ionizing radiation is a health and safety hazard, and nothing can change that. And as a physician, I would say, first, do no harm. Thank you.